Dr. Sarah Chen looked out through the thick glass of Kepler Station's observation deck. Space should have been empty and peaceful, filled only with distant stars. Instead, 12 massive warships floated in the darkness like hungry sharks. Their dark metal hulls gleamed under the light of the nearby sun, and weapon ports glowed with a threatening red light. Sarah pressed her hand against the cold glass. Her breath fogged the surface as she counted the ships again, hoping she had made a mistake. 12 ships, all of them bigger than anything she had ever seen. All of them pointed at her home. "Dr. Chen," a soft voice called behind her. She turned to see Ambassador Keltar approaching. The Etherean looked like a walking crystal sculpture, his transparent blue body catching the light from the station's walls. His people were peaceful researchers, just like Sarah. They had never seen war before. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked. Keltar's body dimmed, a sign of fear in his species. "The hegemony commander gave us 48 hours. That was yesterday. We have 24 hours left." Sarah nodded and walked with Keltar through the station's main corridor. Kepler Station was not built for war. It was a research facility where humans and aliens worked together to unlock the secrets of the universe. The walls were lined with laboratories, not weapons. The people here carried data tablets, not guns. They passed a group of Zafari researchers huddled together near one of the labs. The bird-like aliens whispered in their musical language, their feathers trembling with fear. Near them, 3 Vulcani traders argued loudly about whether they should surrender immediately. Their gray skin had turned pale, and their usually confident voices shook. "What do they want?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Our research," Keltar replied. "The new energy source we discovered could power entire worlds, or destroy them. The Krex Empire wants it for their war machine." Sarah thought about the breakthrough they had made just 3 months ago. Working together, human and alien scientists had found a way to harness the energy that existed between dimensions. It could provide clean power for peaceful worlds, or terrible weapons for those who chose war. The research data was stored in the station's central computer, protected by every security system they could build. They entered the command center where the station's small security team was gathered. Lieutenant Martinez, one of only 3 humans on the station, stood over a tactical display showing the hegemony fleet. His face was grim as he studied their positions. "Any word from Earth?" Sarah asked. Martinez shook his head. "The automated distress signal went out before they jammed our communications, but Earth is 3 weeks away even with the fastest ships. We're on our own." Dr. Yolan, an elderly Zafari scientist, looked up from his console. "Perhaps we should consider surrender. The hegemony promised to spare our lives if we give them the research." "You believe them?" Martinez asked. "I've seen what the Krex do to prisoners. They don't leave witnesses." Sarah had heard the stories too. The Krex Empire was built on conquest and fear. They were huge reptilian creatures twice the size of humans, with natural armor and a love for violence. They led the hegemony, a group of warlike species that spread across the galaxy like a disease. "We have 17 security personnel and some basic weapons," Martinez continued. "They have 12 warships and probably 10,000 soldiers. The math is not good." Through the command center's windows, Sarah could see one of the hegemony ships moving closer. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of Kepler Station. Weapon ports dotted its hull like angry eyes, and she could see smaller ships flying around it like insects around a giant beast. Ambassador Keltar touched a control panel with his crystalline fingers. A holographic image appeared, showing General Thakmor, the Krex commander. The alien was a nightmare made real, massive, covered in natural armor plates, with teeth like knives and small, cruel eyes. "People of Kepler Station," the recording began. Thakmor's voice sounded like grinding metal. I am General Thakmor of the Krex Empire. You have something that belongs to us. Give us your research data, and we will allow you to live as slaves. Refuse, and we will turn your station into space dust. You have 24 hours to decide. The recording ended, leaving the command center in silence. Sarah looked around at her colleagues. These were scientists and researchers, not soldiers. They studied stars and planets, not warfare. The fear in their eyes was clear. "What about the escape pods?" asked Dr. Vess, a young Vulcani researcher. "Destroyed in the first attack," Martinez replied. "They made sure we can't run." Sarah walked to another window and looked out at the enemy fleet again. Each ship was a work of art in its own deadly way. She could see the sleek designs of the Corvin destroyers, built for speed and precision strikes. The massive hegemony battleships were floating fortresses, designed to break entire worlds. And leading them all were the Krex heavy cruisers, brutal and efficient killing machines. "There has to be something we can do," she said. "We fight," Martinez said simply. "We have some automated defense systems, and we can arm the civilians with whatever weapons we have. It won't be enough, but at least we'll make them pay for every inch." Ambassador Keltar's body glowed brighter, a sign of determination in his species. "My people have never known war, but we will not die as cowards. We will stand with you." Around the room, other aliens nodded their agreement. The Zephyri stopped their fearful whispers and straightened their feathers. The Vulcani traders put aside their arguments and began asking Martinez about weapons training. Even Dr. Yolan, despite his age, rolled up his sleeves and asked what he could do to help. Sarah felt a strange mixture of pride and sadness. These beings had never hurt anyone in their lives, yet they were ready to die fighting rather than surrender to evil. It reminded her why she had left Earth to work among the stars. The galaxy was full of good people worth protecting. 24 hours, she said quietly. Let's make them count. Outside the station, the hegemony fleet waited in the darkness. Their weapons were charged, their soldiers were ready, and their victory seemed certain. They had no idea that something impossible was already racing toward them through the void of space, moving faster than anything should be able to move. But that discovery would come later. For now, the people of Kepler Station prepared to make their last stand against overwhelming odds, not knowing that help was coming from the one place in the galaxy that never abandoned its own. 18 hours remained when General Thakmor decided to break their spirits. The massive holographic image of the Krex commander appeared in every room of Kepler Station without warning. His armored face filled the screens, showing every detail of his scarred hide and razor-sharp teeth. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of his flagship, filled with other Krex soldiers preparing weapons and boarding equipment. "Look at me, insects," Thakmor growled. His voice echoed through every corridor of the station. "I want you to see what happens to those who defy the hegemony." The image changed to show a different space station, one that looked similar to Kepler. It was called Harmony Base, Sarah realized with growing horror. She had visited there 2 years ago for a scientific conference. The station had been home to 5,000 researchers and their families. "Harmony Base thought they could resist us," Thakmor continued. "They had better defenses than you, more ships, more weapons. Watch what happened to them." The recording showed hegemony ships surrounding Harmony Base. The defenders fought bravely, their few warships darting between the massive hegemony vessels like angry wasps. For a moment, it looked like they might have a chance. Then the Krex opened fire with everything they had. The destruction was complete and terrible. Within minutes, the defending ships were nothing but glowing debris. The station itself lasted only seconds longer before the concentrated fire of 12 battleships tore it apart. Sarah watched in sick fascination as pieces of the station scattered into space, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of thousands of people. 5,000 beings lived on that station. Thakmore's voice continued over the images of destruction. Scientists like you, researchers like you, they thought they were safe behind their shields and weapons. Now they are cosmic dust. The recording ended, but Thakmore's live image returned. His cruel eyes seemed to look directly at each person watching. You have something I want. Give it to me and you will live. Fight me, and you will become another lesson for the next fools who think they can stand against the hegemony. The transmission cut off, leaving the station in horrible silence. Sarah was in the main laboratory when the broadcast ended. Around her, alien researchers sat in stunned quiet. Dr. Yolan, the elderly Zafari, had his feathered head buried in his hands. 2 young Vulcani students were crying, their gray skin wet with tears. Even the usually brave Etherian technicians had dimmed their crystalline bodies to almost nothing. "It's hopeless," whispered Dr. Vess. "We can't fight that. We're not soldiers." "Maybe we should surrender," another voice said. "Maybe if we cooperate, they'll let some of us live." Sarah looked around at her colleagues and friends. These were some of the brightest minds in the galaxy. People who had unlocked secrets of science that would benefit everyone. But they were losing hope, and she couldn't blame them. The images of Harmony Base's destruction played over and over in her mind. She thought about the research they had done together. The dimensional energy source could change everything. It could power entire star systems without any pollution. It could allow faster travel between worlds. It could feed billions of hungry people across the galaxy. But in the wrong hands, it could also become the most terrible weapon ever created. The Krex Empire would use it to build bombs that could crack planets in half. They would use it to power weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. "We can't give it to them," Sarah said quietly. Dr. Vess looked up at her with haunted eyes. "Then we all die." "Maybe," Sarah admitted. "But if we give them the research, billions of others will die later. The hegemony will use our work to destroy everything good in the galaxy." She walked to the laboratory's main computer terminal and began typing commands. "I'm going to start deleting the research files. If they want our work, they'll have to take it from the backup cores in the station's center. That will buy us time." "Time for what?" Dr. Yolan asked. "The defense guns can't hurt their ships. Our few security officers can't stop their armies." Sarah paused in her typing. She had been thinking the same thing, but she couldn't admit it out loud. Not when everyone was already so afraid. Instead, she thought about Lieutenant Martinez and his plan to arm the civilians. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Time to make them pay," she said. "If we're going to die, we're going to make them remember us." In the command center, Lieutenant Martinez was having his own problems. Half of his security team were aliens who had never held weapons before yesterday. The other half were humans who were trained for crowd control and emergency response, not military combat. "The pulse rifles are simple enough," he explained to a group of Zephyri volunteers. "Point the business end at the bad guys and pull the trigger. The weapon will do the rest." One of the bird-like aliens held up a rifle with trembling hands. "I study star formation," he said in his musical voice. "I've never heard anything in my life." "I know," Martinez replied gently. "But if the Krex board this station, they won't care what you study. They'll kill you anyway. At least this way, you can take some of them with you." The Zafari nodded slowly and practiced aiming the weapon. Around the room, other aliens were learning to use human weapons and improvised explosives. It was a strange sight. Peaceful scientists preparing for war. Martinez's communicator buzzed. It was Chief Engineer Torres, the third human on the station. "Martinez, you need to see this." Her voice was tight with concern. He made his way to the engineering section where Torres was bent over a sensor display. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her usually calm face showed worry. "What is it?" Martinez asked. Long-range sensors are picking up movement in the hegemony fleet, Torres explained. 3 of their ships are moving into boarding positions. I think they're planning to move up the deadline. Martinez studied the display. The enemy ships were massive, each one carrying thousands of soldiers. If they started boarding operations now, the station would fall in minutes. How long do we have? He asked. At their current speed, maybe 6 hours, Torres replied. Maybe less if they decide to rush. Martinez felt his heart sink. 6 hours was not enough time to prepare proper defenses. They had been hoping for the full 24 hours to set up traps and defensive positions. Now, even that small advantage was being taken away. His communicator crackled again. This time it was General Thackmore's voice, broadcast to the entire station. I grow tired of waiting. You have 6 hours to surrender, not 24. Give me the research data, or I will take it from your corpses. Around the engineering section, alien workers stopped what they were doing and looked at Martinez with desperate eyes. They were looking for reassurance, for some sign that everything would be okay. Martinez wished he could give them that reassurance, but he had been a soldier too long to lie about their chances. The mathematics of war were simple and brutal. 12 ships against 1 station. Thousands of soldiers against 17 security guards. Advanced military weapons against scientific equipment. But he also knew something that the aliens didn't understand yet. Humans had a saying, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." They might not have numbers or weapons, but they had something else. They had the desperate courage of people fighting for everything they believed in. 6 hours, Martinez said quietly. Then he looked around at the frightened faces surrounding him and spoke louder. 6 hours to show these bastards that some things are worth dying for. Outside the station, the hegemony fleet began moving into attack positions. General Thackmore watched from his bridge as the boarding ships prepared their assault troops. Victory was certain now. The station's defenses were pathetic, and their deadline had been cut in half. What he didn't know was that somewhere in the darkness between the stars, sensors were detecting the impossible. Something was coming toward Kepler Station at a speed that shouldn't exist, moving faster than light itself. But that discovery was still hours away. For now, the people of Kepler Station prepared for their final battle, not knowing that hope was racing toward them across the void. 4 hours before the deadline, Chief Engineer Torres noticed something impossible on her sensors. She was in the main engineering bay, trying to boost power to the station's few defensive weapons, when her long-range detection system started screaming warnings. The display showed an energy signature approaching from the outer system, moving at speeds that broke every law of physics she knew. That can't be right, Torres muttered, running the scan again. The readings came back the same. Something was coming toward them faster than anything should be able to move. The energy output was enormous, bigger than anything in their databases. She called Lieutenant Martinez on her communicator. "You need to get down here now. I'm reading something that doesn't make sense." Martinez arrived in engineering 3 minutes later, breathing hard from running through the station's corridors. Behind him came Dr. Chen and Ambassador Keltar, both looking exhausted from preparing the station's defenses. "What do you have?" Martinez asked. Torres pointed at her display screen. "Something big is coming in fast from the outer system. The computer says it's moving at impossible speeds, and the energy signature is off the charts." Dr. Chen studied the readings over Torres's shoulder. The numbers were incredible. Whatever was approaching had more power than the entire hegemony fleet combined. But there was something familiar about the energy pattern. "I've seen this signature before," she said slowly. "It's human technology, but not like anything I've seen in civilian service. The power levels are military grade." Ambassador Keltar's crystalline body began to glow brighter with hope. "Could it be a rescue ship from Earth?" "Impossible," Martinez replied. "Earth is 3 weeks away. Even our fastest military ships couldn't make it here in the time since our distress signal went out. Torres ran more scans, trying to get better readings on the approaching object. Whatever it is, it'll be here in 2 hours, and the hegemony is starting to notice it too. On the bridge of his flagship, General Thakmor was indeed noticing the strange readings. His sensor operators were running scan after scan, trying to identify the approaching object. Like the humans, they were getting impossible results. "Report," Thakmor growled at his chief sensor officer, a thin Corvan with large black eyes. "Unknown contact approaching from the outer system, General. Energy signature is unusual, very powerful." Thakmor studied the readings on his command screen. His empire had detailed files on the ships of every known species in the galaxy. This signature matched none of them. "How large?" "Difficult to say, sir. The energy output suggests something very big or something with technology we don't understand." The Krex general's scarred face twisted in thought. He had conquered dozens of worlds and faced countless enemy fleets, but he had learned to be careful of unknown threats. Too many generals had died by underestimating new technology. "Send 6 ships to intercept," he ordered. "Destroy it before it can reach the station." "Yes, General." Thakmor watched as 6 of his warships broke away from the fleet and began moving toward the approaching contact. These were good ships with experienced crews. Whatever was coming would not survive their combined firepower. Back on Kepler Station, the defenders watched on their sensors as 6 hegemony ships moved to intercept the approaching object. The alien vessels were huge and powerful, each one capable of destroying entire cities. "Whoever's coming, they're about to face 6 enemy warships," Martinez said grimly. "Even if it is a human ship, the odds aren't good." Dr. Chen stared at the sensor display, hope and fear warring in her chest. Could it really be a rescue ship? Or were they about to watch their only chance of survival destroyed before their eyes? The answer came 30 minutes later. At maximum range, the hegemony ships opened fire on the approaching contact. Their energy weapons lit up space with deadly beams of destruction, enough firepower to level mountains. The beams converged on the approaching object's position. For a moment, everyone thought the unknown ship was destroyed. Then something impossible happened. The energy signature suddenly split into 12 separate contacts, each one moving in a different direction. What had appeared to be one ship was actually 12 ships flying in perfect formation, using some kind of technology to mask their individual signatures. "Impossible," breathed Torres. "How did they hide that many ships from our sensors?" The 12 contacts moved like nothing anyone had ever seen. Instead of the slow, predictable movements of normal spacecraft, these ships danced through space with impossible grace. They spread out in a complex pattern, each one moving independently but coordinated with the others. The hegemony ships tried to target them, but the human vessels were too fast and too unpredictable. Energy beams that should have hit their targets passed harmlessly through empty space as the ships seemed to teleport from one position to another. Then the human ships opened fire. The weapons they used were unlike anything in the galaxy's databases. Instead of energy beams, they fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The rounds moved so fast they were invisible to the naked eye, appearing only as brief flashes when they struck their targets. The first hegemony ship took 12 hits in 3 seconds. The kinetic energy from the projectiles tore through its armor like it was made of paper. The massive warship broke apart in a spectacular explosion that lit up the darkness of space. The second ship lasted only slightly longer. On Kepler Station, the defenders watched in amazed silence as the human ships tore through 6 enemy vessels in less than 10 minutes. The hegemony warships, which had seemed so powerful and threatening, were destroyed with surgical precision. "Who are they?" whispered Dr. Vess. As if in answer to her question, a new transmission came through on emergency frequencies. The voice was calm, professional, and unmistakably human. "Kepler Station, This is Earth Defense Force battleship Ragnarok. Hold your position. Relief is inbound. Dr. Chen felt tears running down her face. She had never heard anything so beautiful in her life. The transmission continued. This is Colonel Rebecca Harrison, Earth Shock Troops, 1st Orbital Assault Division. We received your distress signal and came as fast as we could. On the bridge of his flagship, General Thackmore stared at his sensors in disbelief. 6 of his best ships had been destroyed in minutes by an enemy he had never faced before. The humans had arrived, and they fought like nothing he had ever seen. "General," his communications officer called out, "the human ships are transmitting to us directly." "Put it on screen," Thackmore ordered. The image that appeared showed a human female in military armor. Her face was calm and confident, and her eyes held no fear. Behind her, Thackmore could see the bridge of her ship, filled with human soldiers preparing for battle. "I am Colonel Harrison of the Earth Defense Force," she said. "You have attacked a research station under human protection. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system, or we will demonstrate why Earth does not negotiate with terrorists." Thackmore's reptilian features twisted in anger. 30 seconds? One human dared to give him, a general of the Krex Empire, an ultimatum. "Human," he growled. "You destroyed 6 of my ships, but I still have 6 more. Surrender now, or I will turn your ships into scrap metal." Colonel Harrison's expression didn't change. "General, you clearly don't understand who you're dealing with. Let me explain something about humans. We have a saying, nobody left behind. When you threatened this station, you threatened human beings and their friends. That was your first mistake." She leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, Thackmore saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. It wasn't anger or hatred. It was the calm, professional confidence of someone who had never known defeat. "Your second mistake," she continued, "was thinking that 6 ships would be enough." On Kepler Station, the defenders watched their sensors as more contacts appeared on the edge of the system. Not 1 or 2 ships, but dozens. The Earth Defense Force hadn't sent a single rescue vessel. They had sent an entire fleet. Dr. Chen laughed through her tears. She thought about all the stories she had heard about human military forces, stories that other species dismissed as impossible exaggerations. Now she was seeing the truth with her own eyes. Ambassador Keltar's crystalline body blazed with joy. "They came," he said in wonder. "They actually came." Outside the station, 12 human ships faced off against the remaining 6 hegemony vessels. The odds should have been against the humans, but somehow everyone watching knew that numbers didn't matter anymore. The real fight was about to begin. General Thackmore looked at his remaining ships and made a decision that would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his very short life. Instead of withdrawing, instead of recognizing that he faced an enemy beyond his understanding, he ordered all units to attack. "All ships, open fire," he commanded. "Show these humans the power of the Krex Empire." Colonel Harrison sighed as the hegemony ships began their attack run. She opened a channel to her fleet. "All units, this is Ragnarok Actual. The enemy has chosen to engage. You are free to demonstrate standard human combat doctrine. Make it educational." As the 2 fleets closed to combat range, the people of Kepler Station were about to witness something that would become legend throughout the galaxy. They were about to see why humans were considered the most dangerous species in known space. The lesson was about to begin. What followed was not a battle. It was an education in human warfare. The hegemony ships moved into attack formation exactly as their military doctrine demanded. 6 massive vessels arranged themselves in a defensive wall, their heavy armor facing the enemy, their powerful energy weapons charging for maximum effect. It was the same formation that had conquered 100 worlds. General Thackmore watched from his command bridge as his ships prepared to destroy the human vessels. The humans had only 12 ships against his 6, but his ships were larger and more heavily armored. Basic mathematics said he should win. The humans, however, had never been very good at following other people's mathematics. Instead of meeting the hegemony formation head-on, the human ships scattered like leaves in a storm. They didn't form a battle line or try to match the enemy's firepower. Instead, they did something that no other species in the galaxy had ever attempted. They turned space combat into an art form. The lead human ship, Colonel Harrison's Ragnarok, suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds. The ship pulled gravitational forces that should have crushed its crew, yet it moved with perfect control. Behind it, the other human vessels split into 3 groups, each one moving in a different direction. "What are they doing?" Thakmor demanded. "Why aren't they fighting properly?" His tactical officer, a veteran Corvin with decades of combat experience, could only stare at his screens in confusion. "I don't understand their formation, General. They're not following any known battle doctrine." The first hegemony ship, the cruiser Deathbringer, turned to track Ragnarok with its main guns. The massive energy cannons swiveled to follow the human ship's movement. Just as they locked on target and fired, Ragnarok simply disappeared. For a moment, the sensors showed nothing. Then the human ship reappeared behind Deathbringer, moving at a completely different angle. The hegemony ship's energy beams had passed harmlessly through empty space. "How did they do that?" the tactical officer gasped. Before anyone could answer, Ragnarok opened fire. The human weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of energy beams that took time to burn through armor, they fired solid projectiles at speeds close to the speed of light. Each round carried enough kinetic energy to punch through a mountain. 12 tungsten rounds struck Deathbringer's rear section in the space of 2 seconds. The impact sites glowed white-hot as the projectiles transferred their enormous energy into the ship's structure. Armor that had been designed to withstand energy weapons shattered like glass. Deathbringer's hull cracked open like an egg. Atmosphere rushed out in glowing streams, and secondary explosions rippled through the ship's interior. Within 30 seconds, the massive cruiser was dead in space, its crew either killed by the impact or struggling to survive in emergency shelters. On Kepler Station, the defenders watched in amazement. The largest ship in the hegemony fleet had been crippled in half a minute by a single human vessel. "How is that possible?" Dr. Yolen whispered, his feathered head trembling with shock. Chief Engineer Torres was studying the sensor readings, trying to understand what she was seeing. "Look at the acceleration curves," she said. "That human ship is pulling over 40 gravities. Nothing alive should be able to survive that kind of force." Ambassador Keltar's crystalline body pulsed with confused light. "Are the humans using robotic ships? No organic crew could survive those maneuvers." Dr. Chen shook her head slowly. "They're not robots. They're humans. But they're humans who have modified themselves for war." She thought about the stories she had heard whispered in Earth's military academies. Stories about soldiers who had volunteered for genetic modification and cybernetic enhancement. Stories about humans who had given up parts of their humanity to become something more than human, something designed for combat. The space battle continued, and with each passing minute it became clear that the hegemony fleet was outmatched in every possible way. The second human ship group had surrounded the hegemony destroyer Painseed. The 3 human vessels moved around their target like sharks circling prey, each one taking turns to attack from a different angle. Every time Painseed turned to face one attacker, another ship would appear from a blind spot and rake its hull with kinetic rounds. The hegemony ship's captain tried desperately to bring his weapons to bear, but the humans were too fast and too coordinated. They communicated with each other through quantum-encrypted channels faster than thought itself. They moved as one mind, controlling 12 bodies. Painseed lasted 3 minutes before its main reactor went critical. The explosion lit up space like a small star being born. The third group of human ships was demonstrating something even more terrifying: precision. They had targeted the hegemony battleship Worldbreaker, the most heavily armored vessel in the fleet. Instead of trying to destroy it quickly, they were taking it apart piece by piece. Each human ship fired at specific points on Worldbreaker's hull: weapon emplacements, sensor arrays, engine pods, communication systems. They weren't trying to kill the ship quickly, they were trying to capture it intact. "They're not just fighting," Lieutenant Martinez realized as he watched the tactical display. "They're hunting." General Thakmor was beginning to understand that he faced an enemy beyond his comprehension. The humans didn't just fight differently, they thought differently. While his ships tried to destroy the enemy through overwhelming firepower, the humans used speed, precision, and coordination to make firepower irrelevant. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead human vessel," he ordered desperately. "If we can destroy their commander, the others might retreat." It was a reasonable strategy that had worked against other enemies, but humans, as the hegemony was learning, were not like other enemies. Instead of retreating when Thakmor's 3 remaining ships focused their fire on Ragnarok, Colonel Harrison did something that defied all military logic. She flew directly toward the enemy formation. Ragnarok accelerated to maximum speed, heading straight for the center of the hegemony battle line. Energy beams converged on its position from 3 different directions, enough destructive force to vaporize a small moon. The human ship flickered and vanished again, reappearing in the middle of the enemy formation. Suddenly, Ragnarok was inside the hegemony defensive line, surrounded by enemy ships that were too close to use their heavy weapons without risking hitting each other. "Impossible," Thakmor breathed. "They can't teleport. Nothing can teleport." His science officer, a thin Zephyri who had been pressed into military service, looked up from his instruments with terrified eyes. "General, I'm reading micro-jump signatures. They're using some kind of short-range, faster-than-light technology." Micro-jumps. The ability to make tiny, faster-than-light jumps across distances measured in kilometers instead of light years. No other species had ever developed such technology because the power requirements were enormous and the precision needed was impossible to achieve. But humans had achieved it. They had built ships that could flicker in and out of normal space like ghosts, appearing and disappearing faster than enemy targeting systems could track. From inside the hegemony formation, Ragnarok opened fire in all directions at once. Kinetic rounds tore through the enemy ship's side armor, finding weak points that their designers had never thought to protect. Within seconds, 2 more hegemony vessels were crippled and drifting. That left only Thakmor's flagship, the massive dreadnought Bloodclaw, and 1 escort destroyer. Colonel Harrison's voice came over the communication channels, calm and professional despite the impossible battle she had just fought. "General Thakmor, this is your final warning. Surrender your remaining ships, or we will demonstrate Phase 2 of human combat doctrine." Thakmor looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were Krek's warriors, bred for battle and conquest. They had never known defeat. But he could see fear in their reptilian eyes as they stared at the sensor readings showing 5 of their 6 ships destroyed or crippled in less than 15 minutes. "What is Phase 2? He asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. Colonel Harrison's image appeared on his main screen. She was removing her helmet, revealing a face that was both human and something more than human. Her eyes held the cold efficiency of a predator, and when she smiled, Thakmor saw something that made his scales crawl. "Phase 2 is when we stop playing with our food," she said. On her command, all 12 human ships suddenly went silent. Their engines shut down, their weapons powered down, and their communications went dark. For a moment, the hegemony sensors showed nothing but drifting hulks. Thakmor felt a moment of hope. Perhaps the human ships had exhausted their power reserves. Perhaps this was his chance to strike back. Then his tactical officer screamed a warning. "General, multiple contacts launching from the human ships. Hundreds of them." The sensor displays lit up with new contacts, small, fast-moving objects streaming away from each human vessel like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. Each contact was tiny compared to the massive starships, but there were so many of them that they filled space around the human fleet. "What are they?" Thakmor demanded. "Unknown, sir. They're too small to be fighters, too fast to be missiles." The answer came when Colonel Harrison's voice returned to the communications channel. "Phase 1 was ship-to-ship combat," she said. "Phase 2 is boarding operations. General, you're about to learn why humans don't just win battles. We end wars." As the small contacts raced toward his remaining ships, General Thakmor realized with growing horror that the space battle had been just the beginning. The humans weren't just trying to destroy his fleet, they were coming to take it. And suddenly the massive armor and powerful weapons of his ships didn't seem like advantages anymore. They seemed like traps. The small objects racing through space toward the hegemony ships were not missiles or drones. They were assault pods, each one carrying 4 human shock troopers encased in powered armor that made them look like mechanical demons from the darkest nightmares. General Thakmor watched his sensors as hundreds of these pods swarmed toward his 2 remaining ships. His point defense weapons opened fire, trying to destroy the incoming threats, but the pods moved with the same impossible agility as the human ships. They twisted and turned through the defensive fire, using micro-thrusters to dance between energy beams. "How many are getting through?" Thakmor demanded. His weapons officer, a massive Krex with scars covering his armored hide, could only stare at his screens in disbelief. "All of them, General. Every single pod is getting through our defenses." The first wave of assault pods struck Thakmor's flagship, Bloodclaw, like hammers hitting an anvil. But instead of trying to blast through the thick armor, they did something far more clever. Each pod attached itself to an airlock, maintenance hatch, or cargo bay door, the weak points that every ship needed to function. Within seconds, the pods began burning through the barriers with focused plasma cutters. The humans weren't trying to break through the ship's main armor. They were using the ship's own design against it, entering through the doors and passages that the crew used every day. On the bridge of Bloodclaw, alarm sirens screamed warnings as hull breaches were detected throughout the ship. Thakmor watched his security displays as red warning lights appeared in dozens of locations. "Seal all blast doors," he ordered. "Activate emergency lockdown protocols." But even as his crew rushed to follow his orders, the first human soldiers were already inside his ship. The shock troopers who entered Bloodclaw's corridors were not the humans that other species knew. These were soldiers who had volunteered to become something beyond normal humanity. Their bodies had been enhanced with genetic modifications that made them faster and stronger than any natural creature. Their bones were reinforced with metal composites. Their muscles were enhanced with synthetic fibers. Their nervous systems were accelerated with bioelectric implants, and their armor made them into walking nightmares. Each suit of powered armor stood over 7 feet tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle, but the human inside moved with perfect grace, as if the massive suit were a second skin. The armor's built-in strength amplifiers meant that a human could tear through steel barriers with their bare hands. The integrated weapon systems turned each soldier into a one-person army, but most terrifying of all was their coordination. The shock troopers didn't fight as individuals. They fought as a single organism with dozens of bodies, sharing information through quantum-encrypted links faster than thought itself. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos was the first human to enter Bloodclaw's main corridor system. Her heads-up display immediately mapped the ship's layout using data downloaded from captured hegemony databases. She knew exactly where the critical systems were located, exactly where the crew would try to set up defensive positions, and exactly how to reach them all. Alpha Team, this is Santos, she said over the tactical network. I'm reading 43 heat signatures in the forward section. Standard Krex defensive formation. Copy that, Santos, came the reply from Corporal Jackson, whose team had entered from the opposite side of the ship. Beta Team is engaging engineering section. Recommend you flush them toward the main cargo bay. Roger. Moving to execute. Santos moved through the ship's corridors like death personified. Her armor's sensors showed her everything. Heat signatures through walls, structural weak points in the bulkheads, even the elevated heart rates of terrified enemies hiding behind barriers. The first group of Krex soldiers she encountered had set up a defensive position behind an emergency blast door. They had heavy weapons and good cover. Against any normal enemy, they would have been nearly impossible to dig out. Santos wasn't any normal enemy. She analyzed the corridor layout in milliseconds, calculating angles, ricochet patterns, and structural stress points. Then she put her armored fist through the wall 3 meters to the left of the Krex position. The Krex soldiers spun toward the noise, expecting an attack from that direction. Instead, Santos appeared behind them, having used her suit's strength to tear a new path through the ship's internal structure. Her integrated weapon systems fired 12 shots in 2 seconds, each one precisely aimed. The firefight lasted less than 5 seconds. Alpha section clear, Santos reported. Moving to secondary objectives. Throughout Bloodclaw, similar scenes played out as human shock troopers systematically captured the ship section by section. The Krex fought bravely, using their natural armor and superior size to try to stop the invaders. But they had been designed for open battlefield combat, not the tight corridors and complex geometry of ship-to-ship fighting. The humans, on the other hand, had been specifically modified for exactly this kind of combat. They could fight in zero gravity or crushing acceleration. They could operate in vacuum or poisonous atmospheres. They could see in complete darkness and hear through solid walls. Most importantly, they thought differently than their enemies. Where the Krex tried to hold defensive lines and fight conventionally, the humans flowed through the ship like water, finding new paths and unexpected angles of attack. Colonel Harrison monitored the boarding operation from Ragnarok's command center. Her tactical display showed the progress of each team as they moved through both enemy ships. Green dots represented her soldiers, red dots showed enemy positions, and blue areas marked secured sections. Bloodclaw is 60% secure, reported her executive officer, Major Kim. Estimated time to full capture, 12 minutes. And the destroyer? Harrison asked. 7 minutes. The crew is trying to scuttle their ship, but Delta Team has reached the reactor controls. Harrison nodded. Everything was going according to plan. The hegemony ships had been designed to fight other ships, not to repel boarders who fought like no other species in the galaxy. On the bridge of Bloodclaw, General Thackmore was learning exactly how helpless he had become. His security cameras showed human soldiers moving through his ship with impossible efficiency. They didn't just fight their way through his defenses, they dismantled them with surgical precision. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from the human commander." "Put it through," Thackmore ordered. Colonel Harrison's image appeared on the main screen. She was still wearing her helmet, but Thackmore could see her eyes through the visor. They held no anger or hatred, just the cold professionalism of someone doing a job. "General Thackmore," she said, "my soldiers have secured 80% of your ship. Your crew has fought bravely, but this battle is over. Surrender now, and I give you my word that your people will be treated according to the laws of war." Thackmore looked around his bridge. Half of his officers were wounded. His security teams were cut off and surrounded. His weapons were offline. His engines were captured. For the first time in his long military career, he faced the possibility of total defeat. "And if I refuse?" he asked. Harrison's expression didn't change. "Then my soldiers will continue their mission. They have orders to capture this ship intact, but they're authorized to use whatever force is necessary to complete that objective. As if to emphasize her point, an explosion echoed through the ship as another section fell to the human assault troops. Thakmor closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his life. "I surrender," he said quietly. "All hegemony forces stand down," Harrison broadcasted on all frequencies. "Any crew members who surrender immediately will be treated as prisoners of war. Anyone who continues to resist will be treated as hostile combatants." The order went out through both ships, and within minutes, the shooting stopped. The humans had achieved total victory in less than 30 minutes of close-quarters combat. On Kepler Station, the defenders watched through their sensors as the last of the hegemony resistance ended. The massive fleet that had threatened them with annihilation was now either destroyed or captured. The impossible had happened. They had been saved. Dr. Chen felt tears streaming down her face as the reality hit her. They were alive. All of them were alive. Ambassador Keltar's crystalline body blazed with joy so bright it illuminated the entire command center. "They came for us," he said in wonder. "When we called for help, they came." Lieutenant Martinez was studying the tactical reports from the human ships. The numbers were almost unbelievable. 12 human vessels had defeated an entire hegemony fleet without losing a single ship or soldier. It wasn't just a victory. It was a demonstration of superiority so complete that it redefined what warfare meant. 2 hours later, Colonel Harrison herself came aboard Kepler Station. She had removed her combat armor and wore the standard blue uniform of the Earth Defense Force. She looked like a normal human woman, middle-aged, graying hair, kind eyes. Nothing about her appearance suggested that she commanded forces capable of destroying entire fleets. "Dr. Chen," she said, extending her hand, "I'm sorry we couldn't get here sooner. I understand you've all been through a terrible ordeal." Sarah took the offered hand and felt the firm grip of someone who had never known defeat. "How?" she asked. "How did you get here so fast? Earth is 3 weeks away." Harrison smiled. "The Earth Defense Force doesn't just protect Earth anymore, Doctor. We protect humans wherever they might be. When your distress signal reached us, we were already in this sector on patrol. We've been keeping an eye on hegemony expansion for some time." She looked around at the assembled aliens, the Etherians, the Zafari, the Vulcani, and others. "And we protect those who stand with humans as well. You're all under Earth's protection now." Ambassador Keltar approached Harrison with reverent steps. "Colonel Harrison, my people have heard stories about human warriors, but we thought they were myths. What we witnessed today was just Tuesday for us," Harrison said with a gentle smile. "We have a saying on Earth, no one left behind. When someone calls for help, we come. That's what neighbors do." She turned to address the entire group. "The hegemony won't be threatening this sector anymore. We've captured their entire fleet intact, along with all their intelligence databases. Our diplomats will be having some very serious conversations with the Krex Empire about respecting neutral research stations." Dr. Yolan, the elderly Zafari scientist, stepped forward with trembling legs. "Will they try to get revenge? The hegemony has a long reach." Harrison's expression hardened slightly. "Let me be very clear about something. This station is now under the protection of the Earth Defense Force. Anyone who threatens it will face the same fate as General Thakmor's fleet. We've made sure that message is being broadcast on every frequency the hegemony uses." As word of the battle spread across the galaxy, reactions varied by species. Some felt relief that the humans had proven capable of stopping hegemony expansion. Others felt fear at the demonstration of human military power. A few began to wonder if humanity might become a threat themselves. But on Kepler Station, as human soldiers helped repair the damage and human medics treated the wounded, the only feeling was gratitude. They had called for help, and Earth had answered. Dr. Chen stood once again at the observation deck, looking out at space. Where the hegemony fleet had once floated like hungry predators, she now saw the sleek ships of the Earth Defense Force standing guard. The stars looked peaceful again. Behind her, Ambassador Keltar approached with his crystalline form glowing softly. "Dr. Chen," he said, "my people will want to know, are all humans like Colonel Harrison and her soldiers?" Sarah thought about the question. She remembered the stories she had heard in Earth's academies about the shock troops and the defense force. Stories about humans who had chosen to become something more than human in order to protect everything that humanity valued. "No," she said finally. "Most humans are peaceful, just like us. But when peaceful humans are threatened, they call on people like Colonel Harrison. And people like her, they never lose." She looked back out at the human ships standing guard over the station. "The galaxy is going to have to learn something new about humanity. We don't just survive, we protect those who can't protect themselves, and we're very, very good at it." In the depths of space, the captured hegemony ships were already being searched by human intelligence teams. The databases they found would lead to the liberation of dozens of conquered worlds and the prosecution of war criminals across the galaxy. General Thakmor, now a prisoner aboard Ragnarok, would spend the rest of his life in a human detention facility, along with the other survivors of his fleet. He would have plenty of time to think about the lesson he had learned. There are some species in the galaxy that you simply don't threaten. And somewhere in the Krex Empire's high command, military planners were quietly removing human territories from their expansion maps, adding a new entry to their databases of species too dangerous to fight. The entry was simple. Humans. Approach with extreme caution. Recommend diplomatic contact only. Military engagement not advised under any circumstances. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun not with conquest, but with the simple promise that when someone called for help, Earth would answer. And Earth always kept its promises.